Well, thank you so much. My name's Amitesh, and I am a staff attorney at Immigration Equality. And I'm going to be speaking about the intersection between immigration issues and the queer rights movement. Just as a bit of background, Immigration Equality is one of the nation's only LGBTQ organization that focuses specifically on immigration law. So we kind of work in that intersection between immigration law and queer rights. And so because of that, our clients mostly include asylum seekers who are fleeing persecution on the basis of their sexual orientation or gender identity, binational couples and families, queer binational couples and families, detainees who are trapped in immigration detention facilities, and also undocumented people who are living in the shadows. And I'm going to try to hurry this up a bit. Sorry. So let's just talk about queer people in the United States. Now, we already know that queer people are a vulnerable group, right? So like LGBTQ individuals are more likely to be bullied by their peers, ostracized by the communities, and they're more vulnerable to human trafficking. And here's like a list of other statistics, right? So LGBTQ youth account for up to 40% of the runaway and homeless youth population in the United States. LGBTQ people of color are overrepresented in the criminal justice system, and discrimination prevents LGBTQ people from accessing proper medical care, even though they need it the most. And also LGBTQ individuals fall victim to domestic violence and other crimes at equal or higher rates to their either cisgendered or straight counterparts. And so as we can see, queer people are already vulnerable. However, being undocumented adds a layer of complexity to that vulnerability. It increases the amount of adversity that queer people face. Let's take, for example, victims of crime and domestic violence. When someone's a victim of crime, say there's a gay couple and one of the partners is abusive towards the other partner. There may be instances even in the United States where the second partner, if even they have immigration status, would be scared of going to the police because they think that the police might not take them seriously. Now, if you take the fact that the partner who is being abused is undocumented, they might be even more afraid of accessing the resources available to them because they might be afraid of their immigration status being found out and then being put in immigration detention, and thus leading them to maybe getting deported back to a country where they'll face persecution on account of their sexual orientation, gender identity, queerness, or HIV status. Even in terms of medical care, there are some places in America still where the only accessible hospital might be run by a faith-based institution, and which might not be very accepting of queer people. Now, if someone is undocumented, they might be afraid even more of accessing medical care because, one, what if their immigration status is found out? And two, they might be afraid of getting even more discriminated against and re-traumatized on the basis of people not taking their queer identity seriously. And so as we see, immigration status really influences one's access to basic necessities, medical care, safety, housing, and all of this, I feel like, so queer people already are vulnerable and already don't enjoy the same access as non-queer people do. However, undocumented queer people, being undocumented kind of makes that even worse. Now, even within the immigration system, queer people face additional roadblocks. So let's just take a look at immigration detention. So when someone comes to the United States, asks for asylum, they might be placed in immigration detention. Now, in immigration detention, queer people are 97 times more likely to be sexually abused. And they might be sexually abused by not only their by other people who are detained in the immigration detention facility, but also by immigration guards, the ones who are supposed to be keeping them safe. We actually had a client who is a gay man living with HIV, and he self-presented to immigration as a gay man living with HIV. Immigration put him in a cell by himself in immigration detention, and outside of his cell, they put a board saying gay, sick, HIV positive. And because of that, he was outed to the other people in detention, who then started abusing him and making fun of him and even assaulting him just based on the fact that he's a gay man and based on his HIV status. And in addition to that, there are so many more roadblocks for queer people, even in the immigration system, as I was saying, for a lot of immigration applications, you have to provide some sort of identity document, right? And it is increasingly difficult for queer immigrants to get identity documents. Maybe they might not be able to get identity documents that match their gender identity or their preferred names. And the lack of having an identity document also prevents access to other resources that might be otherwise available to them. And so as we can see, immigration is a queer issue. If the goal of the queer rights movement is to better the lives of LGBTQ individuals, it is a queer issue because working on immigrant rights will allow LGBTQ immigrants to seek safety in the United States, will allow them to live freely and openly in the United States, will allow them to seek justice, and will allow them the opportunity to live with dignity. And so just as a brief summary, I just wanted to point this out that immigration and queer rights actually have been moving forward a little bit, at least hand in hand, like over the history of immigration. Like, these are a few of the options that queer people can avail of in the immigration system itself. These include asylum, U visas, victims of domestic violence visas, trafficking, like visas for victims of human trafficking. And then there's also the family-based immigration where binational couples can sponsor their partner for a green card, or children born to LGBTQ couples abroad, may apply for citizenship.